And we're recording. And it's been a bit of a nightmare getting this far, but here we are. So here we are to discuss WandaVision episode 8, previously on WandaVision, which started with a previously on WandaVision. If you want to, up to you. Because our picture looks a bit dark. Oh, it looks all right, if you want, yeah. Which I just thought was amusing, the fact that previously on WandaVision started with previously on WandaVision. He's just turned the light on, he'll be back. I'm not sure that's any use at all, but anyway, so yeah, it was now we've had like a 3 sentence discussion on this, and I was like, well, that was a filler. I don't think this episode brought anything to the table at all. That's not strictly true. I think the tiny little scene with Agatha was interesting, finding out they've gone the full comic route with her background and her being part of the Salem witch trials and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just all of the stuff with Wanda, I think it was just assumptions I had made and conclusions I jumped to. So yes, it confirmed it, but I was going, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and. So the only thing then that was of any excitement to me was A, they branded her the Scarlet Witch, and B, weird ass corpse vision at the end in the mid credits.
Yeah, I think it did a lot of showing the backstory of what we've heard of Wanda in the other films.
Yeah,
such as the Stark bomb, it killed her parents.
Yeah.
How her powers were apparently woken up by the Mind Stone. The third one showing the beginnings of a relationship with Vision.
Yeah.
I don't know, because we kind of already had that from the film. Kind of suppose it just gave a little background into that. But then also, yeah, so they mentioned Scarlet Witch at the end, like as though that's actually something more than just Wanda. Like it's something. Well, they mentioned the prophecy.
Yeah.
So there's that. But also, when she was looking into is it the Mind Stone Vision had?
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the figure come down, and it had the very definite silhouette of the Scarlet Witch with the headpiece and everything.
Oh, I didn't clock that. Did you see that? What was that? Sorry. But what bit?
Do you know when she's looking into the Mind Stone and it's all yellow?
Yeah.
And you can see a silhouette of like a person coming down, and she had the very definite had like the Scarlet Witch headdress silhouette shape. And
I missed the headdress, but I did wonder who that Vision was.
Yeah, it's Wanda. Yeah, you're right, Wanda.
It was WandaVision, yes.
Yeah.
No, I didn't clock that at all. I think I was too busy looking at the shiny stone and going, pretty.
All right.
I don't someone at all. Was she doing the pose?
Well, she's kind of doing. She wasn't too dissimilar.
The pose from the game me and Matt used to play. What Scarlet Witch used to? I'll have to move in. It was one hand on the hip and it was like this. And we used to go around. Yeah, we used to go around and like photobomb people in that pose, basically.
But also,
it's a whole thing.
Interestingly, do you remember I messaged you about this a couple of weeks ago, and I said that technically her power in the comics it wasn't strictly magic. It was her mutant ability was the power to affect the chances of probability.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Impossible, possible. And they actually call that out, don't they? When in the bomb, she says you used a probability hex.
Yeah, so presumably they're getting at she because how did Agatha frame it, that she was a fledgling witch that would have the powers would have died on the vine. So presumably she
withered on the vine.
Yeah, so I think it was interesting that they were basically saying that she had powers prior to her tampered with an Infinity Stone, but obviously just small.
Yeah. Now, does that mean, can we infer from that Pietro also had his speed beforehand? And if so, is this like a backward way of bringing mutants in?
That would add up. Yeah, I don't know, because the other thing is for me now, how Agatha's revealed, what did she call him, Pietro or whatever,
Fake Pietro.
fake Pietro. Basically, Agatha steals the show. She's great. It's more of an in joke on us, because there's that kind of cuts off the link to Evan Peters' version of Quicksilver from the films. It's more of a in joke for us than actual continuity and bringing him across from another reality.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's killing dead. I think the chances of those X-Men coming across. I think when they do their X-Men, they want to start afresh and have a whole new cast and new history and stuff.
Which you can understand. I mean, essentially, they've already cast all the X-Men twice within one franchise, so it's not like there isn't precedent for it.
And that timeline. Sorry, go on.
No, go on. You finish what you're saying.
That X-Men timeline's become so convoluted and stretched out that I think you have to start from fresh. Otherwise, you're just going to add more to it, and it's going to get to the point.
The word you're looking for is incoherent.
I very like the comics then.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're very true to the comics completely.
Yeah.
So you've not spoken yet. What did you think?
I liked this episode, and I think what it was very much doing was kind of positioning WandaVision MCU so that the character is kind of much more in line with Scarlet Witch comic version, because Matt's kind of already touched on the whole thing with the probability hexes, and the fact that in the comics Wanda is essentially a mutant whose mutant ability, like Matt said, was to manipulate probability, which then kind of developed with magical training into using chaos magic, and it could just kind of exploded from there. And also kind of obviously the stuff that was into that was one of the last ads about Nexus.
So very quickly, chaos magic was mentioned in the episode. That's a thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I didn't know. I've not read anything with her in particularly. So,
and the Nexus thing about sort of the which again was a very good sort of play on antidepressant medicine from last week's episode, is also a reference to what Wanda is in the comics, which is basically a Nexus being, and it's kind of linked into sort of the role that the Infinity Stones play, which is essentially as cornerstones, I suppose, for what they embody. So like sort of soul and spirit and sort of time and place and all of that sort of stuff. And obviously with them being destroyed, although we know they're not destroyed, they've just basically been dispersed out onto a molecular level. You can't destroy time, space, whatever, without wiping everything out and doing yada yada yada. But essentially what Nexus beings are kind of the like either the stopgap or the replacement for that, and they're kind of beings that sort of embody that particular multiversal reality.
Is Tilda Swinton one of those?
She should be.
I mean, obviously, I can't remember.
Do you mean the ancient one?
Yeah, yeah.
Actually,
Tripitaka.
no.
Right, okay. So she's more like a guardian of such things. Right.
But Scarlet Witch is very much portrayed as being one of these Nexus things because of her ability to essentially manipulate reality. Another one that's which again ironically touches on, because there's very much crossover, and it's probably why I think a lot of the articles, a lot of the fan interest in this is how they get mutants into the MCU. Because Scarlet Witch and the Avenged Generation have always been quite, obviously with Scarlet Witch in the comics being a mutant and obviously linked to Magneto and yada yada yada. But the Phoenix, so Jean Grey as the Phoenix Force is another Nexus being as well.
Right.
So they're kind of separate, and again it's kind of linking into Phase 4 being very much sort of a more cosmic stage. So there's all these kind of things, but I think for me this episode still works. Obviously, one, you're right, it's got Agatha Harkness in it, and she is glorious as a character. I mean, so yeah, Catherine Hahn is I think absolutely nails this kind of Yeah, I very much think that. Again, in the comics, Agatha Harkness isn't a villain, but she's not a hero either. She's very much got her own agenda.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that struck me, certainly from last week's episode, is that and it was one of the shows we mentioned with the whole Modern Family thing, is that they were also kind of drawing a lot from kind of like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Yeah.
But kind of how they were portraying Agatha at the end and that whole scene, and certainly how I think how Agatha was in this episode, kind of reminds me of the witches from that as well, which is that they are powers in their own right, but they have their own agendas, and that it's basically motivated self-interest. But yeah, I liked that they kind of, yes, they filled in stuff that we all kind of already knew, but for me, I think it kind of cemented it, because it felt like in the movies, kind of Wanda and Vision went from just being just like complete strangers to essentially being in a relationship, and there was no real sense of progression. So this, I think, kind of gave you that this is how it began, so you can kind of extrapolate it. I think the whole stuff with the probability hex was very much that this is how we kind of start defining Wanda a bit better than she, I think, has been up until now.
But I think the criticism has largely been that their version of Wanda hasn't been the Scarlet Witch per se, not as you would know her from the likes of House of M and stuff like that. So I think I can see that, and but again, I mean, to me, and this is just what Marvel Studios has done well since 2007 or whatever it was, is they just kind of draw an audience along. So they have like brilliant stuff with like Iron Man 2, Captain America, a little bit of the fantastic in with Thor, you know, but they basically take people and go, look, here's a perfectly kind of not real, but almost grounded on your reality level, rather than going, here's an enormous comic book movie that you're just going to go, oh, right?
DC.
And then come on, you can't. It's like you know, in E.T. when Elliot's putting the Reese's Pieces down. That's what Marvel have done with the public, to bring them to a geek level of knowledge about things, and then magic and multiverses, and you know what I mean. And that's just what they've done so brilliantly, I think. And this is just another step in that. Come on in.
Definitely, and also you've got to bear in mind as well that they've now got the rights to the X-Men.
Yeah.
Because one of the things was Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were always part of this weird thing where they could be in both universes because of the way the rights were. They were Avengers first, but they were also X-Men. So Fox had the right to the X-Men. So they could use them as Wanda and Pietro, but they couldn't use them as Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
But
and
now
they couldn't mention who their father was.
Yeah, and also it was like, and they couldn't really go into the whole their mutants. They have their own powers. It had to be the time stone, the Mind Stone made that for them.
Yeah.
So now they've got the rights to this. It's no surprise that she's now the Scarlet Witch, and it's probability hexes and magic and chaos magic.
Yeah.
You've actually had this from birth. You just didn't know it. So
yeah.
So obviously that's come into it. But yeah, you're right. Absolutely. That's the best thing about Marvel is they've had a long game and they've played it so well. I mean, don't want to jump on DC, but I'm going to.
I do every time.
But it was like Man of Steel, everybody. Whereas Marvel, it was Iron Man. You had two Iron Man films before the Avengers. You had Hulk, you had Thor, and you had Captain America, and then they all led together into that. So Marvel had the long game. They played it, and they did it really well. And like you're saying, and they've because of that, they've been able to use the Guardians of the Galaxy as a leaping off point to the cosmic. But we could do that easier because Thor mentioned the 9 realms, touched on that. So we already knew that these people existed, and then that went a bit deeper into it. And then they had Doctor Strange to introduce the sort of the more astral plane, the magic stuff. And because of that, they've now been able to do a deep dive with Wanda. So yeah, well played, Marvel. Well played.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's been so brilliantly laid out. I think very well thought out. You know, even where you might consider like a misstep. Personally, for me, I would consider the Thor: The Dark World and Iron Man 2 under those banners. But even those are still probably better than Justice League. Do you know what I mean?
Talk in terms of long game. Isn't Justin Hammer from Iron Man 2 meant to be coming back for the Armor Wars TV program or film?
I believe so. Yes.
So,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's all tying in, isn't it? But what the other thing I was thinking of when you were saying that actually is also what they did was they kind of laid the audience's fears out with them. Because if you think, and it's funny because I remember, like, you know, you and I went and saw the first Avengers film together because you were living down here at the time, and you know, we went out and were obsessed with finding shawarma and, you know, all of this stuff, and then realized, oh, it's just chicken kebab meat that we eat every Friday anyway. Brilliant. But then you know, so that was like, oh my god, the most immense, amazing fucking film. If you go back and watch it now, in hindsight, like 10 years on, after having the likes of Infinity War, it's a bit pedestrian, or it feels a bit pedestrian because you've just been taken on this scale. But what thinking back to it is, they even address, you know, the likes of us are going to go on that journey and not question it because we're into the books and whatever else. Your common or garden sort of Joe Public, who are now as invested in these things as the geeks always have been, even got their own moment to address it in Iron Man 3 when you've got Tony having panic attacks about he suddenly realised aliens exist.
Yeah,
I mean, they kind of meta psychologically addressed it.
Thanos was an end credit sting, wasn't he, in the Avengers? Because I remember he came out and I was like, oh my god, Thanos. And you were like, who's that? And I was like, right, Thanos is this person.
I had no idea.
And now, 10 years later, everybody knows who Thanos is. He's like one of the biggest cinematic villains ever. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. You know, and memes galore about being fisted or something. But anyway, but I think it is that that planning, that progression, that very clever laying of the trail. So while I found this episode filler and pedestrian, I can completely understand its necessity, again, for Commodore Garden, Joe Public, who have never actually picked up the comic book of Watchmen or read The Dark Knight Returns or The Killing Joke or invested in some of the more obscure parts of Civil War like Black Panther. Do you know what I mean? It's I can get why it would be necessary in the grand scheme, and also it's very much the American TV format. You know, every season of RuPaul's Drag Race, you get the fucking Road to the Crown episode that's just boring. But just to remind you, remember these first three queens that went out that you've already completely forgotten existed? Well, two of them have died. You know, whatever it is. So it's that format, isn't it?
I would actually say, in some respects, though, that one thing, because we even had a conversation with it either at the time while it was still on because they weren't talking, or shortly afterwards, is I think what this episode did really well, which kind of is it's actually not dissimilar to what they kind of did at the very end of last week's episode, where it was Agatha all along, and you had the quick 2-minute montage thing.
I have a thing to say about that.
Agatha doing that. Was it completely repositioned, certainly my perception of exactly what went on when Wanda went to Sword headquarters, because it'd been positioned way back in episode 4 or 5, whichever one it was, where they're looking at the tapes where she appears to basically blast in effectively steal sort of Vision's corpse and go back and reanimate it. That's 100% absolutely not what happened.
Yeah, but isn't that clip, she blasts in, gets as far as the table, and they pause it?
Yeah.
So you actually don't see any more than that.
But that's my point, though. The whole from the story perspective, it's absolutely and that's
framed as that.
Yeah, and that's the position that I was going to say Tyler Durden, whatever his name is, the new director of Sword, basically takes, is that she effectively swiped the body and stormed off with it. She's a terrorist. She's this. She's that. She's the other. And again, you actually get to the reality, which is no, she didn't do that. She went in there. She left, realizing that Vision is gone.
Went to the plot they've bought.
Yeah, and basically had a complete grief breakdown and let rip with her powers. It's absolutely not how it was positioned.
I'd have to go back and watch it, but when they are in, I think it's meant to be Edinburgh. In fact, I think it genuinely was filmed in Edinburgh.
It looked
in Yeah, it's the road up to the castle, isn't it? Yeah. It's where J.K. Rowling sat and wrote Harry Potter on wet wipes. But
I've never been to Edinburgh, so
I have once or twice. What I've been twice. I don't like to think about either occasion, if I'm honest. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure there they were talking about settling down. I'd love to go back and see if they mentioned they've bought a plot of land, because it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, so this is, I had a bit of a thing with the whole it was Agatha all along. Well, it actually wasn't. It genuinely was Wanda all along. It was more she was Agatha all along.
Yeah,
it wasn't Agatha. It was genuinely all Scarlet Witch, because Agatha's saying to her, "How the fuck did you do this?" So actually, the whole it was Agatha all along was a little bit of a red herring.
Yeah,
but funny. Yeah. So I can forgive them.
I think it's meant to be that everything that's happened in there since then, which has been out of the usual, has been Agatha.
Yeah,
kind of more of that. It wasn't like Agatha's the main antagonist, which put Wanda here. Is more Agatha's in here and she's been playing your strings since you've got in here.
Yeah.
Especially because you got that bit where Agatha talks about the whole how she's been kind of like doing a poke here and a tug there to try and work out what's going on. Which I think was the other good thing about sort of this episode is it kind of, for granted, a lot of those people possibly may not have stuck along with this, but for those people who did stick with it, but who for the first 2-3 episodes were going, "What the fuck?
Yeah, don't get it. What's happening?
Why is it black and white? Why is it sitcom? Why is it this?" This episode basically kind of told you why.
If you look at the DVDs that were in the case, aside from Modern Family, it was all of the styles. They were all there. So there was the Dick Van Dyke, which I'd heard of, I've never really seen, but that was very clearly.
Plus I Love Lucy,
Bewitched. There was Malcolm in the Middle. Yeah. So that was kind of cool. I liked the fact when they got very, again, a bit meta, in as much as they kind of turned the camera around and showed you what's behind the camera. So you saw like the lights and the audience section and whatever else. And I thought, okay, that's cool, because they've not built that as a set. That is genuinely just the set they've been filming on. So I thought that was quite a nice touch and a very easy way to achieve something. But it then leads me to think what's coming, because, and this has been in the back of my mind every time Wanda is like, my children, honey, they're not real.
But isn't that what happened? Isn't that what happened in the? I mean, I'm not 100% on the comics, but I'm sure she magicked them into creation, and they became real people.
Because certainly,
so like Smurfette.
Because one of I mean, and again, I can't remember which one it is. Whether it's not, because it's Tommy and I forget.
Tommy and Billy.
Yeah. Billy. And I forget which one of them had Quicksilver powers. I want to say, so they go, let's say it's Tommy had Quicksilver powers. If it wasn't, then whatever. But it became very apparent in obviously the Halloween episode that Billy kind of had similar powers to Scarlet Witch with the telepathy, this and the other. And in the comics, that character is Wiccan.
Right.
And Wiccan is actually a new, I think it's a new or a young Avenger, I think is whatever the comic title is.
Isn't he one of the ones that's the cause of Civil War?
I don't really know.
That might, I don't know, because I think they're both young Avengers, Wiccan, and I think the other one's called Speed. Don't quote me on that, but I think they're both young Avengers, because Wiccan dates Hulkling.
Yes, because Wiccan's an openly gay character as well in the comics.
And isn't Hulkling coming as a series,
so to speak?
I don't know.
Well,
She-Hulk's coming.
That'll be yeah. Maybe I'm getting muddled with something else. Oh, maybe I'm just remembering because I unlocked him in a Lego game the other night. Perhaps it's that. Ignore me.
Maybe.
I was playing Lego Marvel Superheroes 2, because I've never completed it. I unlocked Hulkling. That's probably what I'm thinking of.
Although you say that, I'm sure I've heard something that they have plans to do either like a Young Avengers or basically something similar to like a Runaways type show, but actually as sort of
Well,
more on the
we've
comic.
got Wiccan, we've got Speed. We're going to get Kate Bishop in Hawkeye.
Hawkeye,
So that's 3 of them there right away.
Yeah.
Because I think isn't Hulkling, is he part Kree or part Skrull or something?
I think he's part Kree.
So that's easy enough to fit in. That could be in Miss Marvel 2
Yeah.
or something. Captain Marvel 2, sorry.
Yeah, well, you've got oh God, what's it called? The Samuel L. Jackson and him off of
Shield.
Rogue One. They've got their own film about. It's not the Defenders. That's someone else.
Yeah, and I can't think. I know what you mean. It's one coming. I can't remember what it is.
It's the one they've set up at the end of
Captain
some
Marvel.
other film. Is it end of Captain Marvel where you see it?
No, sorry. End of
Is it end of Spider-Man? Credit
Might
scene
be.
for Spider-Man?
yes,
I think it might
because the Skrulls are in Spider-Man, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's a credit scene for Spider-Man.
Oh, Secret War.
Might be Secret War.
Because that's one of the movies that you mentioned was coming.
Yeah.
Or one of the
Yeah,
things.
it might be Secret War. Might be Secret War. I just remember reading that it was I can't think of this. Ben Mendelsohn, is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah. And Samuel L. Jackson in the film. So it's obviously him as his alien character, Samuel L. Jackson, because you saw Nick Fury out in space and him and his girlfriend, pretending to be him and Maria Hill in yeah, it was Spider-Man. It was Spider-Man, yeah. Because you've got Spider-Man Never Going Home or whatever the fuck. They've announced the title for the next Spider-Man. Home Sweet Home.
No Way Home.
No Way Home. No Way Home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, this information I retain really well.
Yeah, we're on the ball tonight.
I'm knackered. One thing I do want to mention, though, and I got it out especially, is for my friend Paul Burns, who actually was one of the people who corrected me on something on another video, and I forgot to mention.
Who was actually the person that corrected him and not Matt, as was erroneously corrected.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. And he was on about Monica Rambeau, who incredibly absent this week, I have to say.
Along with Pietro.
Yeah, well, I think he's been done away with, has he not?
No, because the whole mid-credits thing was basically him grabbing Monica as she's about to go down into the cellar.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point.
Also not featured is Darcy, who's still running around, and sort of
Wu's out there somewhere.
WandaVision Vision.
Yeah. So we're gonna have like a Vision on,
potentially,
or a Vision on, if you remember your late '60s, early '70s programs for deaf children, which is where the gallery started, which then went on to Be and Take Heart, which then gave us Morph. I've no idea where I'm going with any of this. Back to Paul Burns. When you were talking about Monica's thing, was it this version of Fantastic Four costume you were thinking of? Answer in the comments or text me or something. I would have worn this, but frankly, I've put on a bit of weight since I bought it 5 years ago. And because it's white, it would have just been a bit nipply. So I don't think anyone needs that in their life. Better off with the black. Yeah, you're my boyfriend. You're supposed to say that. So where do we think it's going to go? That's
supposed to doesn't mean I ever will.
Fucking rude.
So we've got the storylines have got to be tied off. We've got Monica and fake Pietro.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, and then we've got Vision, and then Zombie Vision.
Visions.
Yeah. Very focal, we'll call them. It's plural.
Yeah. We got Specsavers and
and then obviously we got Wanda at the end becoming Scarlet Witch with Agatha and the children.
Yeah.
So there's all those got to be tied in. But I was wondering, and I had a thought before when Paul mentioned this before about No More Mutants, but what if at the end in the TV series she does the reverse?
It's one of the things that's been in some of the because I must admit,
I haven't joined these dots up. What would that mean?
So she says no more mutants and all the mutants go.
Oh right, okay.
Reverse of that, and
right,
it'd be mutants because my children aren't going to be special and picked on.
Yeah, yeah.
Protected. They're going to be part. It's not going to be just them.
Okay.
Because I think I've read. Obviously, I watched it first, and then you get the inevitable sort of article popping up on Facebook. And I think literally throughout the past 6 weeks of the 8 weeks it's been on, at some point, every single article will touch on, so is this how WandaVision is going to get mutants into the MCU? Or is it going to be this? And it does, at some point, get to the stage where you just think, just drop it with the fucking mutants. Already. Just enjoy WandaVision.
All right, I just had that one thought.
But that being said, one of the theories that has been mentioned is exactly that one that you just said, Matt, which is effectively a reverse of the end of House of M, which is basically, you know, essentially let there be mutants, and bang, suddenly, you know, you've leveled the playing field without having to go into some kind of like long-winded, tedious retcon, essentially, for how mutants have suddenly started popping up when they haven't been present in the MCU for, you know, in our terms, for the past 10 years.
And then they slowly go, do you remember the Inhumans?
We don't speak of Atalan, ever.
Sorry, Chloe. The actress who plays Quake in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, no, I was
keep Chloe. Just...
Yeah, no, I was thinking more of the actual series Inhumans that you watched one episode of and decided you were not watching any more of.
Because there's got to be some way that there's no way we're not bringing Miss Marvel in at some point, especially for doing Young Avengers, and she's an Inhuman. But we're going to have, let's face it, we're going to have mutants, we're going to have Eternals, but I'm not clued up on them at all. And then there's also Inhumans running around somewhere. So,
well, that's the thing. So there's basically still an awful lot of Marvel property to bring into the Marvel. Can you call it MCU now? Because it's no longer cinematic. It's now just the Marvel Studios universe. Is it the MSU now?
Possibly.
Or, I mean, it will still get referred to as the MCU because that's what people have called it for so long. But, I mean, technically speaking, it's all Marvel Studios properties. See, now, of all of the above that we've mentioned, so there's also going to have to be, I'm also half expecting some other big character that we know to pop up.
Well, they've mentioned this. They said somebody said there's another, I think it might be Paul Bettany saying that there's another cameo which is going to outdo Quicksilver, Pietro.
Right.
And we've still got to figure out, because they say this ties in very closely to Doctor Strange too. And
exactly that. Do we think Cumberbatch is rocking up?
Yeah. Nothing been there so far, which is really tied into it. But you can, apart from the magic, but that's kind of very loosely still separate.
Yeah. So, but this is the thing. So if it's going to tie into that, and that is multiverse, that's the bottom line for that. Yeah. So is it going to be the whole let there be mutants? She just cracks the realities, and that's why mutants suddenly bleed into our world, because they've already existed on Earth 22, and this is Earth 64 or whatever. Could that be how they do it? So, I mean, I'm doing what you're banging on about everyone else now. How are they going to bring mutants in? How are they going to bring mutants in? How are they going to bring mutants in?
Will you drop the mutants?
They'll break. I can't drop them. They're very fragile. Very fragile. I can't even dust them.
And, you know, and I should put out, I speak to someone who basically grew up reading mutant titles. You know, my experience of Marvel is basically X-Men and all of New Mutants and the other associated mutants. You know, I am mutants first and everything else a very distant second. But it's just like, you know, at least as far as articles go, give it a rest on the mutant angle. Just talk about the show. Talk about what you took from the show, not what, you know, Marvel can do to kind of fucking drag in 15 other
Stop
bits.
having your wet dreams about it.
But in terms of going back to what you were saying, in terms of, you know, this teaser that sort of Mr. Bettany sort of hinted at, apart from obviously the one possibility, which is it's just a massive red herring and Paul Bettany being Paul Bettany and got you all thinking, is yes, obviously Doctor Strange is probably the obvious one. There is a second one, however, when you consider that this is all a huge sort of, you know, threat to reality caused by magic. You know, you've got Agatha running around, very powerful witch. You've got Wanda running around, as we now identified, an insanely powerful witch. Well, there is one of the persons in that, and that's sort of Baron Mordo.
Ah, yeah, it's not Paul Daniels
coming in as, because, you know, you have him in the the very end credit or the mid credit singer for Doctor Strange, going around and basically removing magic from people.
Yeah. and you've not seen him since.
Nope.
Okay, yeah, that could tie in. Equally, it could be is the character called Wong?
Yes.
The Asian dude who's the assistant?
Wong.
Could be him, because he's probably cheaper than Cumberbatch. So
or to tie into the TV theme, she goes back into the house and Barrymore goes there, and then up comes Sooty.
I would love that. I would absolutely adore. Or is it actually just going to be Dick Van Dyke?
Well, yeah,
that would be amazing. That would look the best thing ever. In my head and my head alone, I'm sensing. But oh come on, Dick Van Dyke actually showing up. That'd be hilarious. Especially if you brought Dame Julie Andrews. No tie in there really to the MCU, but I mean, you know, there's an awful lot of gay people like this Marvel show.
Because they couldn't afford sort of Benedict, who is part of the MCU, but they could somehow afford Dame Julie Andrews.
I'm sure she's not that expensive.
Oh, I beg to differ.
Look, she didn't do Mary Poppins 2 because she didn't want to take away the esteem that there was a new Mary Poppins.
Well, they got Jenny Agutter for Winter Soldier, so why not?
Yeah, but essentially playing nobody. The rest of the Railway Children show up. No, that's silly. That's silly. That wouldn't be.
Bernard Cribbins. We're going off brand now.
Bernard Cribbins playing his character from Doctor Who.
Yeah.
How awesome would that be? Yeah. Yeah. Let's face it. The chances are it's Cumberbatch, right? But I get the other thing I was thinking actually. What you were saying. You know, Paul Bettany is known for being a bit of a trickster in his interviews. Perhaps this other cameo is him playing both Visions. But that's what he was getting at.
I assumed he was playing both Visions.
Yeah, but I'm saying what he's saying is there's some big cameo coming up.
And it's him.
It's me again.
Or do they bring Magneto in, and you know that was never your real parents. Here's your real father. And it's a brand new Magneto.
Yeah, if they do it with
Scylla.
Sheridan Smith as Scylla, as an episode of Surprise, Surprise, it comes back into the TV theme.
Yeah.
Although we've kind of moved away from the sitcoms at that
We've
point.
slightly moved away from the sitcoms, and we've moved away into the mid-'80s, me sitting on my grandma's sofa, crying my eyes out eating ice cream, watching some woman see her sister she's not met since 1942 or something.
And now I'm just thinking of the Victoria Wood.
I can't remember the Victoria Wood one.
Pat and Margaret, I think it was.
Was it Pat and Margaret?
I think it was.
Do you know, it's one of like the most critically acclaimed Victoria Wood things ever. I've never seen it. Of all the, I can quote Victoria Wood left, right, and centre, and I've never seen Pat and Margaret.
And on that bombshell,
I said this got awkward quickly. I think I've even got it on the shelf on disc. I don't know. I've just not watched it. So yeah, any more thoughts, or are we just rambling shit now?
I can't believe you haven't seen Pat and Margaret.
Like the rest of my night is maybe I can't believe you haven't fucking seen Pat and Margaret. Oh, and are we going to do a behind our eyes video?
No.
Okay, so all right. So,
I literally summed up behind her eyes in that one bloody line that I posted on Facebook. Sorry, Matt.
Right. So to draw it back into WandaVision, what is each of yours predictions for next week?
I'm predicting either Dick Van Dyke or Cumberbatch.
Okay.
I genuinely, I mean, for one thing, I'm expecting it to be probably a fair bit longer than the 30 minutes. I think it has to be an hour. I think we're going to see Monica Rambeau officially become whatever they're going to call the character, because they can't call her Captain Marvel because there already is one running around. So whether they call her Photon,
which is Spectrum or Photon, it's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was basically that. I have no idea what they're going to do about Pietro, and I love that I'm calling him Pietro from now on until something happens to say otherwise, because whether he will disappear depending on whatever the resolution is between Agatha, Wanda, yada yada yada. I think there is significance in them having successfully animated Vision's body, given that you've kind of got this, because I think the end of this episode where you actually saw Wanda basically lose it, yes, you had her big, sort of standard red sort of cloud energy, whatever you want to call it, but when she was creating Vision, you got that orangey yellow of the Mind Stone. So I think there is something there, and I think Agatha herself touched on it with the whole, sort of, are you sure you don't actually have the power to bring Vision back?
That's true, actually. Everything she created was created in Scarlet Witch color, apart from Vision, who was created in yellow.
Starting in her power, but then morphed into Mind Stone color.
I'm sure there's no relevance at all to the fact that in Knight Rider, Kit and Car's voice boxes were red and yellow.
No.
Thank you, Matt.
Just saying. What do you think, Matt? What do you think's coming?
God knows.
Very honest.
Benedict Cumberbatch. I think it's been said, so it ties into Doctor Strange too so much. I think we're going to see him. Maybe an introduction of Magneto or something like that. That's actually, think about that's probably very unlikely. I think Pietro is just going to fade away. I think he's just an avatar created because she said it was so easy to fool you. I didn't know who that was. It was just so easy to fool you. Just with you wanted to believe it so badly. So I think he's just an avatar that's going to go. I think it's just an in joke.
Yeah, it's dramatic irony. It's knowledge for us. It's nothing in show.
Yeah. We'll see. Monica Rambeau will get her powers. Vision will come back one way or another. Whether it's whether WandaVision Vision morphs into other Vision, creating very focal. Who knows? I don't know. Honestly, I quite like the fact that I don't know how it's gonna end. Is it even a case that Agatha's being controlled by some people mentioned Mephisto? Is he going to crop her in that way? Yeah. Instead of Doctor Strange, and he's like the big bad for Doctor Strange, and he's introduced here. Because I noticed Agatha's mother, when she's using her powers, had like a crown or something of magic. Is that significant to something? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that I liked that. In fact, I loved that whole Salem sequence. I thought that was fantastic. Partly because it not directly because she ended up as a husk, but they had a character in that sort of circle who could have been Tituba from actual history in Salem, because there was a Latina girl. Who was accused of being a witch. It's a big part of, if you ever do The Crucible, the Arthur Miller play about the witch trials, which was also a political allegory for all of the witch hunt, McCarthy witch era, witch hunt era. But Tituba genuinely, you can visit her grave and stuff. And she was described at the time as what they called mulatto, which today would kind of call Latina. Or possibly mixed race, but the fact that they didn't just show a coven of white pilgrim women, I thought was historically accurate and alluded to real known events. So I thought that was quite cool. I did clock the crown. It reminded me a little bit of leader of all of the he's sniffing my ring things. Witch King.
Sauron?
Sauron.
His people.
Oh, the ring race.
Right, the race.
Yeah. The Witch King of Angmar. The one that I am no man.
That's him. Yeah. The one who rides a hoof. Yeah. So that it had echoes of that to me. He rides a flying hoof, didn't he? So yeah. So I thought that was quite cool. But yeah, no, it was. I don't think it was obvious. It was there, but it wasn't. Yeah. It was nicely done.
And also
next week.
Yeah. I was just going to say, also, just to end, the last thought on the Salem thing was, it's quite good because you start walking, it starts and you think she's been there to be burned by people who call her because she's a witch, and it turns in and says no, we're witches, and
Yeah.
we're gonna create
We're
a
good
hush.
witches. Are you a
Which
good
is
witch
good.
or a bad witch?
Yeah.
Which? Ding dong, the witch is
But
dead. Witch, oh, witch,
I
witch.
will possibly make my last comment by sort of saying that I like the fact that none of us have really any idea exactly how the last episode is going to go, unlike Behind Her Eyes, where
Episode 2. I called it in episode 2.
we mapped out exactly how it would end, and that's exactly how it ended.
And based purely on the title, really, because basically I said, well, it's called Behind Her Eyes. There's clearly something going on behind her eyes. It's not right. Perhaps it's body swapping, and there we go. So,
Spoilers.
boo-hoo. Never mind. If you've given your life over, the best thing you can do with Behind Her Eyes is
Watch an episode.
watch an episode tells me expecting it to be shorter, and B, when you get bored, remember that you're watching Bono's Daughter, and in every situation you can, try and cram in a U2 song title.
It got us through episode, was it 4?
4. Episode 4. We laughed from start to finish because we and lots of them were really appropriate. They weren't hard to crowbar at all. Some of them were a bit dodgy, but the one where she walked down the road and there were no signs. I went, oh look, this is where the streets have no name. That was my favourite.
Yeah, it's mine too.
Fuck you, bitch. Cool. Right. Well, you're going to come on and join us next week for the final, Matt, and when we see what's all gone on.
I will do. Yeah.
Marvelous, marvelous. Right. Okay. So say goodbye to everyone, and I'm going to try and work out how to stop recording.
Bye.
This could go wrong. How do I do that? Well, I'll edit this now, obviously, because I can't work out how to stop recording. Hit the record button.
There we go.
Stop. There we are. Stop.